What does the word home really mean when you strip everything else away? In this explainer, we're diving into a super personal story that finds the answer in just two simple but incredibly powerful words. Okay, so just picture this. You and your family have just managed to flee a region that's under missile attack. You are completely exhausted, you're scared, and everything feels uncertain. And then, as you step onto a Republic of Singapore Air Force plane, a serviceman just looks at you and says those words. You're not even back in Singapore, but right there, in that moment, you feel safe. And you can just imagine the feeling inside that cabin was absolutely electric. That quiet, nagging anxiety that had been gripping everyone for weeks, it just broke. As soon as the plane lifted off the runway, applause just erupted. And then, completely spontaneously, people started singing Majula Singapore. It was this moment of just pure, overwhelming release. So that really gets you thinking, right? How did two simple words come to mean so much? How does a common greeting just transform into this profound symbol of safety and identity and belonging? Well, to really get it, we have to go back a few weeks. Yeah, to really understand the weight of that moment on the plane, we need to rewind. Because before all the chaos, life was, well, it was completely normal. Just defined by all those simple, everyday routines that make up a family's world. So the author of this story, Nisar Keshvani, and his family, they had built a life for themselves in Doha. He was working at a university, they were raising their kids, and, like a lot of Singaporeans who work abroad, they were deeply connected to home, but living their lives somewhere else. It was a life of stability, of routine. And then, just like that, everything changed. This slide really shows you the jarring contrast. One minute, your life is about your job and your family, and the next, your entire world shrinks down to the sound of missile sirens and the walls of a tiny 2 by 2 meter safe space, as you're trying to shield your own kids from a reality that you can barely even process yourself. And this wasn't just a one-off scare. We're talking about over 100 missiles launched toward the region during this time. Now, thankfully, they were intercepted, but the psychological toll of living under that kind of constant, invisible threat, it's just immense. Every single siren, every tremor from an interception was this brutal reminder of just how vulnerable they were. It's interesting because while the author was busy managing the crisis at his university, the real anchor for his family was his wife, Melati. Her whole focus was on creating this little bubble of normalcy for their two young children, trying to shield them from the fear and just keep the family grounded. It's this incredible form of quiet heroism, the kind that often goes completely unnoticed in big crises. So, as the situation got more and more dire, the need to get out became urgent. But here's the thing. Escaping a conflict zone is anything but simple. This was the beginning of their journey home. The initial plan was, well, it was grueling and just packed with uncertainty. It involved this incredibly long bus ride across borders just to get to an airport where they would still have to deal with closed airspace and try to find connecting flights. There were absolutely no guarantees. But then, everything changed. The Singapore government made the call to send in a military plane, an RSAF aircraft. And that decision just cut through all the chaos. It created this clear, decisive path right through the middle of all that uncertainty, pointing directly towards safety. And this brings us to the flight itself, a journey that was so much more than just getting from point A to point B. It became a sanctuary, really, a little floating piece of home. The crew really showed a side of military service that most of us never get to see. These soldiers weren't just pilots and crew members. They were, for all intents and purposes, caretakers. They flew thousands of kilometers into an active crisis zone, not just to pull citizens out, but to offer comfort, serve meals, and just reassure these worried families with this incredible calm and steady presence. And Melati's words here just capture the whole feeling perfectly. She said it wasn't just what the crew did, but the familiar, reassuring way they did it. That Singapore way, she called it. That feeling of being understood, of being cared for by your own people, it made them feel like they were already home, long before the plane even touched down. And that feeling was just solidified when the pilot came over the intercom. By framing the mission as an honor, he completely wiped away any final lingering fears. The passengers realized they weren't some burden being rescued. They were fellow citizens being brought home by a crew that was genuinely proud to be doing it. And that was the moment. The moment all that pent-up emotion, the fear, the relief, the gratitude, it all just crested. That shared experience and this immense sense of belonging just overflowed into the national anthem, sung by a cabin full of strangers who, in that moment, weren't strangers at all. They were just Singaporeans. So what's the bigger takeaway here? What did all this teach them? Well, this whole experience turned out to be a profound and very, very personal education on the real meaning of peace and what it means to be a nation. Ultimately, the word home just completely transformed. It stopped being about a physical address on a map. It became an identity. It became this unwavering belief that no matter how far away you are or how bad things get, you belong to a nation that will come for you. You know, living through a conflict, even for a short time, teaches you a vital lesson. Peace is fragile. It is not the world's natural state. It's not the default setting. It's the result of constant, dedicated work through diplomacy, strong institutions, and the service of countless people. It's something that has to be actively built and protected. For the evacuees, this whole operation was a living, breathing demonstration of the Singapore system in action. The response wasn't panicked or chaotic. It was calm, it was methodical, and it was thoroughly professional from start to finish. It was just a powerful reminder that the systems built over generations actually work, especially when you need them the most. And that brings us right back to where we started. Those two words, welcome home, spoken on the steps of that plane, they were no longer just a simple greeting. The experience had completely redefined them. They became a promise of safety, a promise of belonging, and a promise of a nation's commitment to its people, no matter where in the world they might be. And that's a promise worth protecting for every generation. And that really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? We've heard what home came to mean for one family in their darkest hour. So it's worth taking a second to ask ourselves, what is the promise that your home, your community, your country holds for you?